rainwater harvesting. And I'm going to touch just a little bit about wells and a little bit about ponds and lakes, but not much because it doesn't apply to very many people. So I'll spend most of the time actually going on rainwater harvesting, what homeowners can do. And then after we get through that, we're going to touch a little bit just on sanitation, and then spend the rest of the time actually looking a little more in depth into these filters. Actually, some of these, the Sawyer ones we just got, and I'm seeing them for the first time also. I know about them, I know what they do, but actually seeing them, and so I'll go over that. And the also we have one of the KISS models on here. I can show you a little more about that. So we'll go into a little more details, and then also just kind of question and answers, and also just see what you guys are doing and what plans. Something we all might have different things we can share with each other. With wells, there's about 15 million U.S. households depend on wells. And private well systems that serve less than 25 people and have no more than 15 service connects are not regulated by the EPA. Okay, so as long as you're a private system and it's less than 25 people and you're not having more than 15 service connects, you're not subject to the regulations of EPA. Otherwise, it would be a major deal because you're going to have to be sending water samples all the time, testing your water, a lot of regulations that go with it. The types of wells usually are dug, drilled, and driven. And from the other presentations, I told you how we had actually a hand-dug well that was dug by hand. And most wells are drilled. Well drillers, and some are even driven. Some driven. There's some actually hand people who live in a more of a sandy type soil, and they have water that's pretty close to surface. We'll use some of those. There's also a water pressure driven well that can be used, but for the most part, it's usually driven wells. If you have one, you locate at least 50 feet from a septic tank or petroleum truck or tank or anything, or like 100 feet if you have like a manure stack or where you're holding manure, you want at least 100 feet from that. Now, of course, the negative side on a well is you need power, you need some way to pump it. If it's shallow enough, you can still get the old hand pumps, like the old Lehman's, like you can get a Lehman's catalog, they still have the old hand pumps you can still buy and purchase. So that's an option, because you need to be thinking about, okay, if power is disrupted, then how am I going to get that water up without my pump working? Another thing about wells is, as we consider the cost and there's actually no guarantee, I'm actually been kind of looking at that because I'm looking for ways to, on my property, to have more water availability. And so I've looked at drilling a well, and so I've got to look at it, and it's going to cost about $6,000 to drill the well. And there's no guarantee that I get water. I mean, there's water around, and they are successful, but it's not a guarantee. So, the reality could be that I could have a $6,000 hole. And so, that's a consideration to go, well, do I want to chance that or not? So right now I'm looking at other options before I'm, going to do that. Ponds or lakes, same thing. It can be costly. You need to have the right location, the right runoff, that you have a runoff that would, that would feed it, either that or have a spring. It's a spring-filled pond or lake. You need the right soil conditions. Clay is the best. When I had my older house on the property, we had a really good lake, and then when we moved, there's a pond on the property, but it's we have a limestone fairly close to the surface, and it actually leaks. So I had some clay brought in, packed down. Thought that would seal it, and it still leaks.
Y'all use bentonite to do that?
Yeah, they say you can use bentonite. Now I didn't do that. It'd take a lot of bentonite to actually put in it, but yeah, that's something you can put in there. That supposedly, even if you have some water in it where it will settle and it's supposed to basically expand with the water, and we'll have seal tanks. I didn't go to that step yet, but that is a good point. But again, you need some way then to transport or power to get the water from, your pond or lake to wherever, to your household use. So that's another issue. So again, going on to what I think actually is most useful for most people in suburbia is the rainwater harvesting. So go ahead. Now, cisterns have been, archaeologists have discovered cisterns, at least 4,000 years old. They've been around for centuries. People have done that throughout the ages. If you go to Rome today, they say there's a huge cistern that sits under the city of Rome that was actually built during the Roman times. And that's how they supplied the water to the city. Thomas Jefferson, he set up a system in his house that had 4 different cisterns that he caught the rainwater off of and then used it for his household use, for his plants, and also for his garden. So it's something that's been around for a long time. And some of the advantages of it is that, with 1 inch of rainfall, you get 0.624 gallons per square foot. So let's say you have a smaller 1,000-foot square roof, you can collect 624 gallons off of 1 inch of rain. So that's a lot of water that you can catch and use. And the best part about it is that it's the cost is right. It's free. It has 0 hardness. There's no sodium in it. And obviously, again, it's a lot better for plants. You notice the difference between if you're using city water to water a garden or plants, and then compare it to when you get that same amount of rain that comes on it, the difference in the growth and how much more effective it is.
How much gallons again?
Okay, it's for each inch of rain is 0.624 inches per square foot. Now your system components, obviously you need a roof, a house or a building. The metal is best. Like I had in my barn, I had a metal roof, and that works the best. But you can also use whether it's tile, asphalt, or composite shingles. I mean, they will all work. It's just that metal is usually the best. You need a gutter and downspouts, obviously. Sometimes assume, well, that's kind of normal. Everybody has gutters on the house, but I've been in some locations that they don't actually use gutters. So having gutters and downspouts, and then some way to protect what's coming into that water. So a lot of times people use leaf guards, and there's different types of those. Some are like a mesh thing that will fit inside your gutter. Some are actually overhang over the top so that the water runs, or anything except the water will run off the top. So you don't get leaves and you don't get twigs, some of the larger items in there. There's also things that call the downspout filters. You probably find a lot of these things at Home Depot, Lowe's, those type of stores, but they're actually kind of a mesh filter that you can put in your downspout at the top, like if you don't do a leaf guard, and it basically does the same thing. It basically strains out, again, your leaves and your twigs, anything else that might be coming in there. The only problem with that is that you have to get on a ladder and get up and clean it out every so often, otherwise it's going to plug up. While the leaf guard, will keep that from happening. We also have what's called a first flush diverter, and actually they're a pretty simple. There's a couple different designs, but one of the simplest things, let's just picture your downspout coming down, okay, and let's say you have a tee off, and then it's going to go off down into your whatever container that you're capturing your water in. Well, after it tees off at that 90, if you go on down, they will have that capped off a lot of times at the bottom with a little cap, you can remove. That means that when it rains, that first flush or that first, maybe 5-10 minute rain will come down the gutter and go down to that bottom part. So it would wash off like your, dust, it would wash off bird droppings, that type of stuff. So it will keep your water, cleaner. There's also some more high-tech design they have on it. That's kind of like the simplest type. And it's just a means of washing some of that stuff off before it goes actually into your tank. They also have what they call a roof washer. And that sounds kind of a misnomer because it sounds like it's on the roof, but it's actually not on the roof. It's actually just above your storage tank that you're going to be going into. And it's more for larger, like a cistern or something you'd be putting in, because they're like at least a 30-gallon container, and they have a baffle in it, and then they have usually like a 30-micron filter in it. So we filter out, again, the larger items, and then it goes down into your container. But it's called a roof washer. And actually, you can use just a strainer. Like at one of my barns, I had that 650-gallon tank. We actually just found a kitchen strainer that just happened to fit right in because it's got like a 6-inch hole, and just fit right in it, and just fit real well. So that works too. That we catch the leaves and we keep the twigs, and then I just have to remember every now and then to go up and clean it out and take the stuff out of it. But it works well. Now what I did do well this year was every year I usually empty the thing and then I wash it out, clean it, just so I start the spring fresh kind of again, and I didn't do that. And I also didn't get the leaf strainer in time, and I got some leaves in there, and then, eventually you start to have to build up of algae. And my tank is actually, if you don't remember in those pictures, it's kind of white, and so it should be opaque, because when the sun penetrates it, that encourages the growth of algae. So they actually ask that they be painted color to be opaque so that sunlight can't penetrate it. So those are the things I've done wrong. Storage tanks. Okay, you can have anything from a simple rain barrel to a concrete cistern. They have fiberglass ones. They have polypropylene, wood, metal. They even have wood ones I've seen, metal. In fact, this one, looking at this picture, this is one that's kind of a flexible model that's in a crawl space at somebody's home. So they fill it. Obviously, they don't have a basement, but it gives them a space where they can put it and actually capture some water. Let's go ahead and just run through some of those others and let's look at it.
That looks very, very large, is it?
Do one pretty good size, yeah. In fact, I'll show you one really large in a minute. Now this is, I think this was in Florida, and they're doing this a lot, where they're not going very far underground, but this is going to be actually a patio. And so for new construction, they're doing a lot of this where they're putting these in and tying it up to the gutter system and filling each of these different bladders. And then eventually that'll actually be a patio over the top of it. Okay? And that's just another example of a different type. Okay? Now this is a little more high-tech guy, looks like. He's got a solar powered pump, looks like, on it. And he's capturing the water out of there. Okay? And there's just rain barrel system. If you go to even like YouTube and just type in, put in rain barrel, you'll get all sorts of little videos where people have sent in their videos of where they've done their rain barrels. And they will, many times, like in this case, these two, sometimes they have like a whole row, like 6 or 8 of them together. And so that when one fills up, then they have it going over to the next one, it fills up, and it just keeps going down the line until they fill it all up and they have a place where we can run out. Okay. There's just a real simple one, just up on blocks where you can drain it out. It's good to have it on blocks or something, because like what I use mine for a lot is watering, like say, the garden and plants. So you want a little elevation. And then I have it attached, down to actually garden hole size. And that way I can just drain it and use it to water the garden, water the plants. Okay? Now this one is a friend of mine. This bladder, this looks like a big water bed almost. Okay, but that's actually 50,000 gallons. That's a lot of water. It's a big water bed. He has a Sullivan's greenhouse. They have a greenhouse business and have several greenhouses. And obviously, water was one of their biggest costs. And so he's been switching over the last few years to supplying all his water needs through catching water, through rainwater harvesting, and has reduced his overhead tremendously. Plus, it also has made the plants have actually reacted a lot better. So that's one of them. That's actually a surplus military, and he got it really cheap. Okay, he's got some more on here. That's a little blurry, but those two tanks there are off one of his greenhouses. And I'm trying to think how many gallons. Okay, for each inch of rain, those two, they are able to collect 8,800 gallons. Of course, those are long spans of roof. And those are a couple he's put in, and actually a couple more concrete ones. He's in hasn't buried them yet. These are going to be below ground. So he's got his whole system set up that way. Okay?
Why do you do so many different kinds?
He came like on those surplus ones. He actually came across those on Craigslist. So he already had those two large blue ones that we saw. He already had those in place, and he's just been expanding. So as they've gone, then he got such a good price on those bladders. So I'm going to try that out. So he's kind of always experimenting with different things and different ways to get water. And then he has a whole system where it's pumped throughout his greenhouses there was some slides on micro filters. So I don't know where the rest of those slides were, but anyway. But some advantages that you guys have is obviously in the winter I have to drain mine because we get weather where it's going to have several days, maybe 0 below. And I'm not so worried about the tank itself freezing, but about some of the components as far as the plastic fixtures that I have on it could split. So I usually end up, November, December draining them, which is fine because I don't need the water at that time to, for the garden or anything. But in an emergency, that wouldn't do me good. So that's why I'm looking at putting in an underground cistern, like an 1,800 gallon cistern that I have underground. That way I have access to water during the winter throughout the year. So that's kind of my next thing. And you guys wouldn't have really that problem because it's not going to get that cold here. I mean, you're going to have some probably teens and stuff, but you're not going to have a long spell. Probably it's going to be that cold. It's going to be an issue. Also, the ARCSA, which is the American Rainwater Catchment System Association, is located here in Austin. Now the website is www.aresa.org. And that's got a ton of information. And also in Texas Tax Code S151.355 exempts rainwater harvesting and supplies from state sales tax. And Austin, and I assume this is still in effect, the City of Austin offers rebates and discounts to customers who install rainwater harvesting systems. So that may be something you want to check out. But so obviously they're trying to encourage rainwater harvesting.
What containers do that?
Well, that depends on actually I think kind of on your circumstances, because again, like in my case, where I'm worried about freezing, I'm gonna put mine probably it's gonna be a concrete below ground. They actually make the mounts, to use the plastic or the polyurethane ones, they need to be built or actually designed for underground because of the weight of the soil and stuff on it. But people use everything, like I say, a lot of people in Kansas City area, I forgot how many barrels, they have what's called Prepare to Share up there in the Kansas City area. It's kind of a website that IHOP uses, and it's for people who are interested in preparedness. And so they go in and do kind of group buys, and I forgot how many, hundreds of barrels have been bought, and they usually get them surplus. In other words, they've had from different companies who use them for some type of product. As long as it wasn't a chemical, harmful product. A lot of times it may be soap or maybe whatever. And so they can pick them up really cheap, and then they just adapt them. And like I say, you can go to actually onto YouTube and they kind of go right through the instructions of how, where to put your spigot at, and how to function your gutter down. And it's really pretty cool. And a lot of people have a lot of different ideas of how to do it best. I like the larger plant, I like, of course, it depends part of this too on like if you're in a neighborhood, like what they're going to allow you to do. Like if you have a home association, you probably have to check on that because some of them may not want you setting out a big, 1,000-gallon tank out in your backyard. But otherwise, I say the bigger the better type thing. If you have a way, to use that water because, again, the cost is going to go up. I've been reading some of the H2O websites, and they're talking about different places in the country, how much water rates are going up, and it's going to just increase and increase. So even just in the natural, without a disaster, I think it's going to be something very worthwhile to do, is to begin to capture as much water as you can. And it really just depends on personal preference. But I say go to some of the YouTube and look at the different ones, see what fits your situation. Does anybody have rain barrels now? Okay, what kind?
I just have the 55-gallon rain barrels, but I got two hooked together off the 2 downspouts coming off the house, so I'm able to capture a little bit more because they're hooked together.
Okay.
And I bought them for $20 from a lady who has a restaurant and gets all that flour and sugar and so she $20, pretty cheap.
Yeah. Didn't take too much to adapt either.
Does it rain, one rain fill them up?
Yeah.
And you use it mainly for outdoor watering?
Yeah,
or-
I just use for outdoor water.
Okay. But again, in an emergency, that's another water source.
Is there a solar pump that a cheap solar pump that I could hook up to that so I could actually pump the water out of there, or is it, I'm just gravity fed right now?
Yeah, that's all I am right now too, is gravity fed. I've seen some online. I don't know exactly how cheap they are. And the other thing I'm worried about is that, it takes a pump runs quite a bit of, watts through it. That's the thing I'm kind of concerned about, how much, in fact, that's one thing I'm looking at is now solar, and just partial house using for emergency basically time, putting in some solar panels too.
Right. I thought one of your pictures you mentioned solar.
Yeah, there's one there that he had a little solar pump on there, but I don't know as far as effectiveness of it and how much it is or the
Right.
details of it, yeah.
Okay.
Don't really know that one.
I want to check with Tractor Supply, they might have
Okay.
Yeah, they're coming out with more and more stuff all the time, especially solar-wise, the things available, so. Who else has anybody?
I have a single rainwater barrel. It's in your picture, it's kind of like I don't know, it's dark green on the outside.
Okay.
I think it's about 50 gallons or so. We use that to collect the water and water plants.
Okay. And Glenn?
Well, if you're using one of those recycled rain barrels and it's in a place where it needs to look nice,
my understanding is that Fusion paint that you paint plastic with
Mm.
does a really good job of dressing them up.
Okay.
So that might be helpful.
Yeah, that's at Home Depot and Lowe's and everything. I think I painted some PVC with it. Okay.
Yeah.
We bought a rain barrel at Sam's and we had to get it approved by our homeowners association. But we still haven't gotten it hooked up because it's in our front yard and we need to get a nice hookup. Can you recommend a good way to hook it up? We had just had our gutters replaced because of a storm just before we decided to do this. Is there a good way to divert it into?
Divert it in. Well, I put it in my barn actually because I had thought about it beforehand. So when they came, they actually put the gutters on. That was the plan. I told them where, this is where the tank's going to be, and this is where I'm going to want to, run the gutters. So it depends how handy you are, and what type of are they aluminum guttering or?
The gutter is, I guess, aluminum, but the container itself is kind of
Yeah.
plastic type.
Because sometimes a lot of those are like a lot of times aluminum be one stretch or one.
Yeah.
So you need some way actually to cut that and divert that. They have like places again like Home Depot. Some of those will have like a flexible pipe that you can kind of put it somewhere and then where you can fit it on there and then run it on down into your container. And again, they come in all sizes, and I've seen all different types of containers that people use. I've used that 275 gallon, I think like you see out there, those IBC containers, have little metal racks around them. And we got those, I got one, not from there because those are new, but I've got one from actually a Little Debbie's factory, I think it was down in Arkansas, that a friend of mine had got for us for like $35. And it had soy in it, product when they made the Little Debbie, goodies. But, so it had been cleaned out, had to clean out some more. It got a little gunky stuff in it, but it still, still works fine. And over time, that kind of all washes out. And anyway, if I was going to drink it, I'd be running through a purifier anyway. But as far as plants and stuff, it's fine. So you just don't want something that's had, like say, some type of harmful chemical in it. And we also bought another one that has that was used to make soap. And obviously, that's not a problem except that, when you first use it, it makes bubbles, lots of bubbles. So it's a good, yeah.
Well, one of those big square tanks with Winkley's in Liberty Hill, just to haul water in, water trees. And they also have some other barrels. I understand you can get at least the barrels, the plastic ones, I don't know about the big square ones, over at Smith's, and is it Lockhart or Lumen over there? Okay. And two places I found that.
Does your tank actually one of those that fit into the back of the pickup truck, like over the wheel wells?
No, I haven't seen it in the trailer. It's just
Okay.
the same thing we have down here.
Okay.
In a lot.
Because they do have those. In fact, one of mine was like a 450 gallon ones that actually fits in the bed of a pickup, and so it's kind of cut out the side so it fit, slide over the wheel wells. But yeah, that's good. Another good way to water, like if you're mobile and want to move. And remember also that's a lot of weight.
The big bladder that the guy bought at the Army surplus,
Uh-huh.
that you showed us a picture of, what would that be called? Would it be called a water holder or what?
Yeah, I'd say bladder. I don't know what the official name, military would have been, but that's what it was made for. It was actually for potable water.
Okay.
Yeah. And it'd be something worth, checking a Craigslist or something like that to find, because he, at that time when he bought this one, I think the guy who had him had like 5 of them. And, he was reselling them at the time.
I think I've seen pictures of the government using those for jet fuel too.
Oh,
So if
really?
you find one, you might want to.
Yeah, make sure we have water in there. But what's amazing is the thing, how sturdy that is, because you think that's a lot of weight and everything in there, and that, but he can leave it out, I think in the winter. So it's a very, it's pretty, I was pretty impressed with that. So. Although again, when we're talking about, you know, that water and using that for emergency water, then we still need to, even though we you know, put a strainer in or we use leaf guards, you still need to, you know, before you actually would drink that, you'd want to purify it some way. So, again, I'm gonna go through these different ones that we have here, the Sawyers and the Kiss, and you kind of saw the Berkeys out there. But before I do that, just a couple things about trash and sanitation, because this is something I ran into when we responded to Hurricane Gustav on Grand Island, Louisiana. So the first one to actually cry was back on the island that we were let back on. And we were serving meals to the National Guard, and the first responders who were back on there. And trash became a huge deal because what do you do with it? We were set up in a school and we didn't have any place, you know, we were serving everything, you know, with plastic plates, paper plates and drinks and trash piling up. And of course there's no water service, there's no sewage service. And so we kind of used the, you know, the bucket method. We had the bucket with the toilet seat type thing on it, and then we took also some lime with us because we thought that might be the situation. And so you need to begin to, you know, to think, okay, what if sewage service, trash service gets cut off? And I think some things to remember is to get rid of clutter and dispose the things now while you have trash service that's available. Learn to reuse and recycle. Try to reduce and control the buildup of trash in your home. And when trash removal is disrupted, burn the burnables, if you can, in the fireplace or campfire or a barrel in the backyard. Well, I'm lucky where I live because that's how I do most of my trash. You know, we're able to burn in a burning barrel. So, but use caution, extreme caution, because emergency would probably be limited as far as emergency services in case of a fire. Non-burnables like cans should be compressed as much as possible, placed in trash bags inside trash cans with lids that can be clamped into place in order to prevent rodents and other animals from getting into it, which is another issue we had because we had rats, you know, that were running all around. Now, many food scraps may be composted by burying them in a trench along the edge of the garden. The exceptions would be bones, meat, scraps, etc. Now, waste disposal must be handled carefully in order to prevent disease, pests, and rodents. Now, if sewer lines are not usable, or if water is not available, there are a couple of options that could substitute for functioning toilets. Carefully place a garbage bag inside a toilet bowl. Use only for solids. Be careful that it doesn't puncture, and cover with lime or kitty litter to reduce odor. Also, if you burn wood, you might want to, you can keep, now you just keep back some ash from the winter before in a big barrel, so if it ever is needed, you know, it's there. You can create a bucket toilet system. One idea is to use 3 buckets. The first has a regular toilet seat attached and is used only for solids. The second contains either lime, kitty litter, sawdust, or peat moss to cover the waste in the first bucket. The third bucket is for urine. After the first bucket is full, the second bucket is used with a toilet seat, while the contents of the first bucket are buried. And remember, it's important to bury human waste. A pit, FEMA advises digging a pit 2 to 3 feet deep, at least 50 feet downhill and away from any well, spring, or water source. Other outdoor experts recommend 200 feet away from water sources. Now, urine isn't usually considered to be a problem and may be disposed of without a lot of concern. Now, to disinfect the buckets, you may add 1 cup of bleach to 1/2 gallon of water in the bottom. Some recommend sprinkling or on baking soda, alcohol, laundry detergent, or pine salt to control the odors and germs. And you may also purchase a chemical toilet, porta potty, or composting toilet. You can find those, a lot of different places sell those type of things. And in each case above, biodegradable toilet paper is recommended. And with any of these choices, you must plan, and supplies must be in place ahead of time. Stock up on trash bags, plastic buckets with lids, and kitty litter lined with bleach.
When you say lime, is that like the mason uses to lay bricks, or what is lime?
Yeah, which is basically crushed stone, but yeah. It's like the agricultural lime,
Average what?
agriculture type of lime like they spread on fields. Yeah. And you can use kitty litter, or like say even ashes, would help if you burn wood. So there's things to consider, and like I said, that was quite an issue with us in Gustav, because I forget how many of us was on a team, probably 8 or 9 people, and that was, you don't always think of those things, but we also took, bucket baths, because there was not obviously a shower, but after 3 or 4 days, you get pretty grimy, and a bucket bath actually feels pretty good compared to, although it did rain one day, so we got underneath the gutter, so we kind of got a shower that way. But anyway, things to think about. There's so many things that we just take for granted that are always available, that in an emergency, and then especially if you think about how tied we are to the grid, it goes down. So much of our life changes overnight. We're so far removed from the time when we didn't have electricity, and everything now is so dependent on technology and everything we do. And like I say, it's good at exercise sometimes if, to take a weekend and again, just go without power. Say, okay, turn off the power, we're not going to use anything that takes power, and then begin to take a list of things that you realize, well, I didn't think of this, I didn't think of that, I didn't think of this, and that kind of gives you a list to begin to work on, work on things. Because there's just so many things we just take for granted that you just don't think about it, and no person would. And again, sometimes preparedness can seem like it's overwhelming, like, man, there's just so much, how can you do it all? But if you just take simple steps, one step at a time, meet your water needs first, then see if I get some food stored up, then think about some of these other issues with power, how can I do things without power? Just think of alternative ways to do things, because, we can't be going out helping anybody if we're, if we're not taking care of at home. And so many times, as I think Dr. Williams was saying, first responders sometimes go out, but they really don't have things taken care of at home. And it's kind of hard to leave if things aren't, in shape there. But on to the water purifier. So let's say you have your rain barrels, you have your tank, whatever it was that you decided, or say in your neighborhood you have, there's a pond or there's a lake, neighborhood lake, some way that you could access water. Okay, but you want to purify that water. Okay, some of the newer ones have come out. I'm going to be moving, so. Now this, again, like I say, these sawyers are brand new. That prepare the way if you start. This is the 0.02, which means it takes care of everything. Viruses, bacteria, protozoa, everything. Now it comes as a kit. And I actually think this is, if you had to, you could just use your hand with that drill bit and drill your hole through the bucket. Now you don't get the bucket, so you have to use your own buckets, come up and just buy whatever size buckets you want to have. Because it doesn't come with the kit. But it comes with the filter, and the line with it, comes with the adapter, and the way they work is kind of like it's got a picture on here. Okay, you take your bucket, you're going to be drilling a hole in there with that drill bit that they gave you, and the filter on these, which are different than the KIS, to keep it simple, or Berkey's, is that the filter is in the line. So your line, all you're doing is drilling one hole. You're setting your hose through the bucket, and then the filter's in the line, and then just gravity, it's just gravity fed, and then whatever the container you're gonna be filling with clear water, or with the clear, pure water. And then it has a little hook, on the top of the bucket, so that, say you finished filling your bucket, or whatever you're putting the water into, then you just hook it back on top of the bucket, and that's it. And the good thing, again, about the Sawyer, I say the biggest advantage is that you never have to replace the filter with that. It backflips. Like this one will come with as part of the kit, a syringe. And you just take clean water and it syringes and back flushes through it. So it's a cool way of doing things. And you can, again, the positive thing that I like about this as compared to these other models, as you can see on these, it says like 1 to 2 persons, because it's more mobile. But this would be something for like more to have at your home. So, for household use. But they're really a slick filter. And it says up to 600 liters of drinking water per day through that. And that's the 0.02. They also have a kit just like this. And I don't think Terry has these prepared away, but you can get them. And they're the same thing, except they're the 0.1, which means they do the bacteria and the protozoa, but they don't do viruses. But they are cheaper. So in fact, that's what I'm buying. I've actually bought like 3 of them, because we'll get one, and I'm going to get a couple tonight. My 2 sons, so they're going to have them too. Yeah.
What is the respective price of this one and the 0.1?
Okay, let me get my little sheet here. This is the bucket kit. It is. This is the one. Okay. 2. It is $129.99. Now this one next to it is actually more. It's $219.95. Now it's a 0.02 also, so it takes care of the viruses. What's different about it is that it comes like in 2, this one doesn't really have a good picture on it, with bags, basically, that's a better picture, of clean water bag and dirty water bag, basically. So you put your dirty water goes in the top bag, and then the filter's down into your bottom bag. The only thing, again, is that how many people are you going to be providing water for? So as this says, it's better for small, for 1 or 2 people, for travel, because it's pretty handy to take. But if I was doing it at home, thinking about doing it at home, I'd want something probably bigger that's going to produce more water that I can do because you need to think about, again, cooking, and you're drinking water. So these are both the O2s, 0.02, which take care of the viruses. And then these other 2 models are the 0.1, and again, they work the same way. We got the clean and the dirty bags, 2 liters, and the hoses and the filter. And they also have on these actually an adapter you can hook back to your faucet to back flush it. Now the old ones also are a little faster because it's not as, the pores are larger, so it doesn't, it actually can produce water a little faster than that. And so both of these last 2 are the 0.1s, and these 2 on this side are the 0.02 models. Now,
How many microns is a big bird?
they don't, on the black murky now, they don't give a micron rating. When they were back there, ceramic model, or the white ones used to say, I think, 0.2, or not 0.2, yeah, 0.2. But the black murkies, they don't actually give a micron rating on it. It's kind of their newer technology, and it's supposed to basically do everything but the viruses. I mean, it gets down to 99 and say 0.69 at the decimal. So it does They are great, and they will do, again, the advantage that they would have over these, they do chemicals and herbicides and pesticides, by these stuff. Now, speaking of Berkeys, just to give you an idea, you know, I had the picture where you had all the different sizes on them earlier. The smallest one is called the Travel Berkey, and I don't know really why you necessarily would want it. It's just a smaller model of the bigger ones, and unless, you know, the reason they call it Travel is because it's more easier to take with you. But it's like $220, and it produces 2.5 gallons an hour. And the storage capacity is 1.5 gallons, so it's just smaller. Everything about it is smaller rate as far as water going through, being purified, smaller container. The next size up is the Big Berkey. And he only has, I think, the Royal Berkey out here for demonstrations that you can see. But he has all these different models on the Prepare Their Way website, so they're all available. He just didn't bring them all. But the Big Berkey is the next size up, which is $250, and with 4 elements is $339. Now it does more, of course, because it's larger, 3.5 gallons per hour with 4 elements, 7 gallons an hour with 4 elements. Storage capacity is 2.25. The Royal Berkey is the one that they have active for demonstration that you'll see out there. And it's with 2 elements, it's 275, 4 elements is 364. And it does 2 to 4 gallons per hour. And with 4 filters in it, it will do 8 gallons an hour. Storage capacity is 3.25. So again, as you go up the line, all you're doing is you're getting larger storage capacity, you put more filters in it, and produce water faster. And so you go through all of them. There's also the Imperial, is a Crown Berkey is the largest one, and with 2 elements, it's like $317. With 4 elements, 4 filters, it's $406. And with 2 elements, it will do 6.5 gallons an hour. With 4 elements, it'll do 13 gallons an hour. With 8 elements, it'll do 26 gallons per hour. So its capacity is a lot more. And storage, unit is 6 gallons, so it's a lot bigger. And again, it's all gravity, just uses gravity. Now the other one is the KISS filter kit, and it actually comes in a kit similar to what this Sawyer little bucket kit did. Let me pull that over here. So it comes with a kit, but it comes actually with the buckets too. And it is, what is the small one, is $58.50. $58.50. And it produces 1 gallon an hour. And it comes with 2 buckets, and then you have your spigot at the bottom, and it has your filter that goes in the top bucket. And you just drill basically 2 holes, a hole for the spigot, and a hole for the filter to fit there that goes to the second, and it's just gravity fed. Basically like a Berkey, works the same way. And you could probably actually do the same thing if you wanted to if you just bought some Berkey filters and adapted, make your own adapter, you could use the Berkey filter. The reason he's got that huge one out there, that Keep It Simple one. As you can see, the shape of this filter is it's wide, it's kind of short and squat more looking as compared to like a Berkey. So you can only get 1 filter in this size bucket. So that's one reason he went to that kind of super size, but you could use, a bucket bigger than this and put like 2 filters in. You could not get 2 filters in this one because of the shape of the filter and the size of it. But in that big one he's got out there, it does like 204 gallons a day. and it has 5 filters in it, and then he has 4 spigots in there. And then I don't know if you noticed, they have a little video explaining how they made that, and it's really pretty simple to do. And the larger one doesn't come with the big buckets. You have to get them on your own. But still, you could do something, from this size all the way up to that size. You could just, based on what you want to use. But it is effective, and it does work on everything except again viruses. So as long as it's not a problem with waterborne viruses, and this will take care of your needs. And if it's something, that you're not going to be using all the time, something you can set in the closet somewhere, and then when you need it, it's there. You can pull it out in an emergency and use it. It has a pre-filter on it, kind of like a little sock thing that fits over it. It just prolongs the regular ceramic filter in there. And then this one I haven't seen. This is the new KISS one. He's got a sample of that hanging up, but it's kind of like the bag one of these, and works the same way. And these are $69. And that's the first time I actually have seen these. Now, does everybody in here already have a filter of some type, or is something you haven't got yet? Okay, so let's talk about who does have a filter. Let's say first. Okay, what kind you guys have?
That's Berkey.
Okay. And have you guys used them yet?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
all the time.
So you use yours all just for your all drinking water,
Yeah.
basically?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, some people do that where, just because they don't like the taste of their water, they have the city water or because chemicals in it, whatever, and will use it continually. And some people buy them and actually just kind of store them away for an emergency in case they need it and not used on a daily basis. But they work very well. And like I say, they're the ones that you can put watercolor in it, and it will take out the color out of the water, so it's working. And any of these filters are gonna, as long as they're putting water out, you don't have to worry about them as far as having bacteria or anything in it. What will happen the filters will just slow down, keep getting slower and slower until they almost don't put out any water. And then you either need to change it, clean it. And most of them, like the Berkey or this one, you can take a little Scotch pad and you kind of clean it off, and prolongs the life of it. You can do that several times. But eventually, where there's 3,000 gallons or 6,000 gallons, depending how many filters you have in it, it's going to clog up. And then you do need to replace it. So it's always a good idea to have, at least a couple filters, in the spare, and you can just keep them. They usually come in a package, usually in like a cell phone bag, and they're just, their shelf lasts forever. So, you can continue to use those. So.
What do you recommend for more portable, like something you would put in a backpack or a bug out bag?
I would, because I probably prefer maybe my first choice being either like a sterile pen or one of those straws just because of the size. Now what I use,
Like the Frontier?
yeah, like a Frontier one, were fine. I used, like when I was in Haiti, I had the little sport Berkey bottle, and it worked great. It's a little bigger though, so if you're carrying it, it takes up a little room and you've got a pack or whatever. While those things, don't take up any room. So that's a big advantage there.
Okay.
What other questions? Yeah.
For everyday filtering, like I think he's saying that he does, would any of these filter out fluoride? Because I've been hearing so much about, they say we should have it for our teeth, but now people are saying that's bad for us.
With fluoride, I know it's like Berkey sells an extra filter that attaches to their filter that is supposed to remove fluoride. In fact, I haven't had a Berkey book here. Let me just see.
Yeah, it's a white.
Yeah, white thing. You had one of those? but they have a long list of things, let's see, toxic radiological heavy metals like aluminum, cadmium, chromium, copper, lead, mercury. But that's why I'm thinking that the fluoride, it doesn't, because they have the additional filter to go and filter that out. And I haven't seen any here that lists fluoride on it. So I'd say no, unless, someone knows different than that. Any questions, whether it's the filters or, trash and sanitation or rainwater harvesting, any of the things, as far as any ideas? You know what, some people are doing too, remember, a lot of people are trying to do more like a community group where they're buying, like I mentioned that one big Katadyn filter that was like over $1,000, but it will produce so much water that they're going in together. Again, that's in Kansas City area, they're doing a lot of that where they're doing kind of group buys, and so they're buying some of it for themselves as individuals, but they're also buying some as a group. So like a home group, a community will go together and they get their neighborhood together, and they would say, okay, we're gonna buy this together. And so they have it on hand, so everybody doesn't have to have everything, in other words. And sometimes they're specializing in somebody who's real good. Like we have a ton of ham operator licensed people now, and we have our ham radio, and we both have ham radios now. And so everybody's taking different little aspects, of preparedness, because there's just so much, it can be overwhelming. But if you get like-minded people together, a community who are all working together, then you don't have to know it all. You don't have to be a specialist. Like have very little knowledge of solar. Like I said, I'm going to be adding some of that, but I've got a friend who does, and so he's actually going to be the one installing it for me. So as we begin to work together and begin to form communities where we don't have to feel like we have to do it all ourselves, and then we can depend upon one another. And so they're making different plans of things they can do together. Some of them are even doing community gardens together, where they're, rather than each individual person, they may not have the space, but then they have a location where they can all work together and do work days. And so they have regular meetings. And so it'd be like a home group, except some of the emphasis is on preparedness. And sometimes you think that, maybe some of your friends that you talk about preparedness, they're going like, they just don't understand. And it's funny because I've had that happen, and then like a year or two later, the same people have come up and were just so excited about everything they were doing preparedness, and it was like you just had to kind of bite your lip because you're thinking, a year ago you didn't even want to hear about it. Now all of a sudden they didn't even remember you talked to them about it. It's like went right over the head. But now all of a sudden they're on it and they're excited and just growing. So I think we're seeing that begin to happen. More and more people are getting connected to it. They're beginning to see, what's happening. The world is changing, and just the natural disasters, one after another, to continue to grow and increase. And so it's obviously people are beginning to go, something's up, something's different now. And so people are really beginning to awaken to the fact that we need to do things, and we need to change our paradigm, the way we look at things. And unfortunately, we've got a generation or two now from where we used to do things the other way. Although it wasn't necessarily that long ago, I was reading in our Rural Electric magazine that it's had a special anniversary year where it says 75 years ago was the first start in Missouri of the rural electrification, first electric co-op form. And I got thinking, that wasn't that long ago, and that wasn't just the start of it. That wasn't that it was implemented. They were just beginning it. So in that way, and now we've come so far that we are so dependent upon it that we are very vulnerable to things happening. And so we just need to be thinking all the time about, what are the possibilities, Anybody ever read the book 1 Second After? You've heard of that? It's a book, I don't necessarily recommend it in a way because it's not a Christian book, but it's a book about an EMP attack upon the nation and what happens with an electronic magnetic pulse bomb goes off in the air. No one's killed, obviously, from the nuclear explosion, but it knocks out all electricity, fries most circuits, electronics, and then it goes through what would happen 1 second after, okay, what happens within a year's time. And actually within a year's time, and this is, experts on it who've actually studied and looked at it, like 90% of the population dies within a year because we have become so dependent upon our life, style, the way it is now and the way that things were connected to. So again, it wasn't, again, from a Christian perspective, but it did make you look at all the different things that I hadn't thought of before. Oh, I didn't think about that. I didn't think about this would happen, without electricity. So it was kind of a sobering, and I don't, personally, I don't think that's going to happen because I don't think we're at that point. As I look at, my eschatological outlook, God always begins to, as he, begins to discipline, with Israel, it was always in measure, it was always with redemption enough to draw them back. And that's like, if that was happening, that would be like the last stage. That would be pretty well, our nation. But anyway, it did give me a perspective to begin to look at things differently and begin to look at, okay, I haven't thought of so many different things that I thought I was prepared, but there were a lot of holes without looking at. So I just want to kind of encourage you guys just to, if water ought to be one of the first things you need to think about, making sure you got that covered. Again, looking at, okay, do I have water storage? How much do I have? Where is another water source where I can get water? And then when I get water, how am I going to purify it so I can drink it, cook with it, etc. And take that as your kind of like first step if you haven't done anything, and then begin to work on the food. Begin with simple things like storage of food, going, when you're at Sam's or something on sale, buy a bunch of extra cans. Those cans, like they have an expiration date on it, but they say, the food scientists say that unless that can has been damaged or is bulging or something, that can is good for a lot longer than what they say it is. So you might lose some, some quality as far as taste and stuff, but it will still be good. It wouldn't hurt you. So just begin to take small steps to add, add to the pantry. We've got our water covered. We've got some food stored up for whatever you're thinking 3 weeks, whatever period you kind of got in mind that I'm covered for. Begin to expand on that. And just begin to take those small steps. And as you begin to take steps, then the big ones don't seem so big. It's kind of like eating an elephant, it's one bite at a time. You don't take the whole thing on at a time, but do something. Come away from this conference and say, okay, I'm going to do at least one thing. I'm going to get covered, and then begin to work on that. Unless somebody has any questions, then yeah.
If I go to a disaster area, just go up to Joplin, and I've got my big water, I've got this thing that I bought, and it's been sitting in my garage, and I go, hey, I'm gonna go do some good, and I take it on up there. At what volume, or when does the FEMA guy come over and say I can't do that? Because I know it happens, because I talked to a guy that on the industrial level in Dallas that does this stuff, and he told me it does happen. So I was just curious.
Yeah, one of the big, huge thing with that is credentials. So, like with you guys, if you've got your Austin Disaster Relief thing, that makes a huge difference. Because like when I was with CRI, we have our crisis response national badges, and we had the hard hats, the whole thing going in. So, like when we went down to Grand Isle, well, when we left, we thought we were going to New Orleans, and then of course the hurricane turned and went a little different direction. The damage was a different place, so we ended up at Grand Isle. But they were turning most people away, but because people were coming down to try to help. But when we got there, because we had our credentials, we are a recognized organization, they let us in. We told them what we had, that we're here to feed people, and they let them in because. It's what FEMA calls a second disaster, which is, untrained volunteers showing up and just creating more of a mess. But when I was down at Joplin, I take it back. We did have a couple times where we went through, where the police had a roadblock, and we had to show our ID, and we were able to get through because we again had our crisis response badges. But there were a lot of people still getting through different ways. So it just depends. I mean, they had tons of people. I think there were like 300 Nazarene men down there when I was there. There was just church groups from all over that were, that were responding and doing a lot of stuff. And as far as water, actually at that time it wasn't an issue because they had so much bottled water people were bringing in. And when you have a tornado, devastation is tremendous, but it's just through, like a 7-mile area about a mile wide. Then you go, you get past that and the stores are open and, you wouldn't even know it. And yet at ground zero is nothing. So that's kind of a different, a different disaster setup, I guess, because you can get help in quickly. If you take something like a New Madrid earthquake, or you take the San Andreas fault, something like that, that covers a lot bigger area, square miles, that's a whole different ballgame there. Because then where's help coming from? And like I said, I've been in a lot of meetings with FEMA and SEMA, different groups, and one thing I know is that what's coming is going to surpass what they can do. And so that's one thing, they're really reaching out to churches now, because they know this is beyond what we're going to be able to handle. And especially when they begin to happen here, and there's never one happening here, it's like Katrina on steroids happening 2 or 3 at a time. There's no way. And, with Crisis Response International, we've been responding to Haiti and different places. But as I see the future is going to be more regional, because I don't think we're going to be able to get from here to there, to the coast, or here, wherever, because it's going to be, we need responders to respond to this locality, Texas, or Oklahoma, whatever your spirit is here, because I don't think there's going to be times where transportation, you're not going to be able to do those things that we've done in the past. So that's why one thing we're doing, and so many people are doing now, is trying to raise up people all over. We just did a presentation up in Madison, Wisconsin, and that's probably one of the most liberal places. They call the University of Wisconsin Berkeley East, but very liberal. But there's a very vibrant church there at the same time, and really on fire, and people who are really interested, and they're doing things that I was really shocked at. I mean, they're preparing to be a refuge city for Chicago. I mean, that's what the Lord has spoken to many of them. And I mean, they're doing things like buying apartments, complexes. Many of them have been called to, do things on a large scale. And it's kind of like, many of them thought, well, I'm the only person that, is doing this, and this, I feel like a weirdo. And then they meet all these other people who God's put the same call in their life, and all of a sudden, well, I'm not so weird. God is speaking this to different people. And so, like I said, I've been over the West Coast and East Coast, and people are sensing the trouble's coming, and they're doing things, they're beginning to prepare and to be an answer. In fact, CRY, that organization that I work with, was headquartered, I guess, out of Kansas City, but they've recently relocated to California, just above Los Angeles, outside in the desert there, because they think trouble is coming there. So they want to increase position supplies, get people trained for things that are going to be happening there too. So it's like, one thing I can assure you, you're not going to be bored. So many Christians are bored. They won't be bored. There's been plenty of action. But, the good thing is for such a time as this, it's why God, some people get overwhelmed by it and they look at it and think, but hey, God knew you were alive, going to be alive at this time in history. And history is His story. And He's, you're bringing into it, it's like you're in the last 2 minutes of the game, we're in the fourth quarter. This is the time. I mean, this is an exciting time. I mean, there's a lot of negative things, but there's going to be a lot of positive things happening all at the same time. As the evil increases, the light's going to be increased. So it both goes hand in hand. And it's going to be an exciting time. I think with each of us, God's going to have us on different journeys. And there will be no retirement in the kingdom of God. So don't plan on that. It's going to be good.